Hello there, Michelle here. Today I'm taking part in a video hop for the new Snow Dance kit from Creator Smile. It's an amazing kit full of papers, chipboard, enamel shapes, twine, sequins, die and a stamp set, all in a lovely pouch which you can see here. Christine will be sharing a look at the full contents on the first step of the hop. The kit will be available to purchase on the 17th of October at 3 PM at British Summer Time, and that's 4 PM Central European Time and 10 AM Eastern Standard Time. For my card today, I've cut out a panel of white cardstock using a Simon Says Stamp stitched rectangle die, and I'm going to make a scene onto this little panel here. So I have some masking paper and I'm just using my scissors and I'm cutting a bit of a slope. So I'm going to make a snowbank here. So just cutting that down, just making sure that it's going to fit, taking the backing off of that and then popping that down onto the panel. Just want to make sure that it's sort of straight here. It doesn't matter if it goes all the way to the bottom, I just want to make sure that I've masked off where I need it at the top. And now I've got my Ranger craft sheet here and I'm going to do a little bit of ink blending. So the first colour I'm using here is the Broken China Distress ink. And I'm using my ink blending tool, just making sure that it's really well inked up here. And then I'm going to stamp off a couple of times just onto a piece of scrap paper. And this makes it so that I don't get any of the kind of blending marks as such where the actual foam is on the applicator. So I get more of a smooth transition. So I'm just using circular motions here and I'm adding that ink onto the panel. I want the bulk of the colour to be on the outside portions and then the lighter part to be in the middle. Once I'd blended all of that colour how I wanted it, I'm then going in with a darker shade, and this is the Blueprint Sketch colour. Again, I'm just focusing most of the colour on the outside portions of the panel and leaving the inside a little bit lighter. Once I'd finished blending the top portion, I then took off the bottom part of the mask, and now I'm using that top portion of the mask that I cut, and I just want to add a little bit of tumbled glass to the bottom. Snow in general appears white, but it's not quite necessarily white, and this is kind of like a night scene I suppose, so you'd get the reflection of the moon and the sky onto the snow. So just add a little bit of the blue onto there. And now I'm using this stencil from the kit, really beautiful. As you can see, there's loads of different snowflakes and there's also little circles that you could use as snow. So I'm going to be using them to add a little bit of snow onto the background. I'm just deciding here which circles I want, and then I'm adding a little bit of post-it tape onto them just to mask off the extra portion. And then I'm using some Hero Arts white unicorn ink. I'm just dabbing my ink blender into that. It would be better to use a dauber, a little bit smaller thing, but unfortunately I didn't have one spare, so I'm using a blending tool. The ink goes on quite bright white to start with, but as it dries it does dry back a little bit paler. So here I've added some more post-it tape onto where I think I want to use the 3 different sizes of the circles. I do end up actually adding a couple more extra where I haven't masked off the post-it tape, and I'm just very careful not to smudge anything. And here, because obviously I'm adding this stencil back on top of the ink which is still wet, again I'm being very careful not to move the stencil and kind of shift it while I'm adding it over the top, just so that I don't smudge any of the ink. Once I'd finished with that, I set that panel aside to dry, and now I'm going to stamp the Santa image from the stamp set. It's just an absolutely adorable little image here. I'm inking it up with some Memento Tuxedo black ink and then stamping that down. I didn't get a perfect impression the first time, just for some reason. It's nothing to do with the stamp, obviously my stamping skills, so I'm just inking it up again and then stamping it again. So just stamping that down, and then I'm going to colour him with some Copic markers. I tend to start with the skin when I'm doing images, if I'm doing a person image, and I'm starting off with R20 for the cheeks. And then I'm going in with my darkest tone, and this is E13. Just adding a little bit of shadow to the top of the head where the hat meets the head. So that would be the darkest place. And then I'm using E11. Just blending that in again. And then I'm blending it with the E00. And then my lightest shade, which is the E000. And I'm going over the cheeks here as well, just to blend them in. And then again, I'm just adding the same shades onto the nose. And just going over the head a little bit more. Next, I'm using some reds to colour in his Santa suit here, and also the hat. I'm first using my darkest shade, which is R89. I can go over the sides of the image here because it doesn't matter, because I'm going to be fussy cutting it out. I do actually struggle to do this sometimes. Even when I can go over the lines, I very rarely do. But thankfully today I did manage to. It does speed it up a little bit. So this is the next shade, and this is R39. These are more on the pinkish side, but then when I add the lighter shades in here, which is R29, and then I'm going in with R27, it does make it more of a bright red. So this is the R27 here. This is my lightest shade. So I'm just going over everything that I've already coloured in, just to blend it all together. Next I'm going to colour in his boots, and I'm going to use some cool grey markers for that. So I'm using C8, C7 and then C6, just for a little bit of highlight on the top of his boots. I wanted his gloves to be white, but I don't want to just leave them without any colour at all, so I'm just adding a little bit of C1 and then C0. And then last but not least, I'm going to colour in his beard, so I'm going to use W1. These are the warm greys. And then I'm going to blend that all together with the W00. Once I'd finished the colouring, I'm then going to cut him out using my scissors. Once I'd finished cutting him out, I then went around the outside of the image with a memento marker. This is the same black that I used for the stamped image, and it just kind of neatens everything up. I'm then going to stamp the Ho 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 sentiment from the stamp set onto my panel. Again, I'm going to use some Memento Tuxedo black ink. Just ink that up really well. And then I'm going to stamp that down. I'm then going to add this panel to my card base, so I'm going to add some foam tape onto the back of it. Just cutting little pieces off there, and then I'm going to remove the backings. And then the card base itself is some white cardstock cutting to an A2 sized card base. And then I don't know if you can see on camera, but I've added some embossing with another of the Simon Says Stamp stitched rectangle dies. I'm just adding my little Santa on here. Didn't quite get him straight to start with. Lifted him up a couple of times and put him back down. To finish him off, I'm using a little bit of glaze pen onto his boots, just to give it a little bit of shine. And then I'm going to use a black, kind of like a glaze pen as well, I suppose. It's a jelly roll pen, but it gives a little bit of dimension. I'm just using that on his eyes. And then I've got a little bit of multi-medium matte here, and I'm just applying that to the white parts of his hat. And I'm going to add some glitter onto there. This is the Distress Stickles dry glitter, and that's in the Clear Rock Candy. Just adding that onto him and then taking off the excess. And then I'm going to add the excess back into the jar. I'm then just using a dry paintbrush to get rid of any of the excess glitter. So that's the finished card for today. Links to the products I used will be in the description bar on YouTube and also on my blog. and I will have a link to the kit once it's been released. Please click on the top left of the screen to be taken to the next person in the hop, and I will have a link in the description bar as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.